Welcome back to the Arcopia Show. Today I'm going to talk about the Dark Ages 2.0, which a lot of things going on in the world and the civilization cycle, if you know that, and that strong men creating good times and, weak men creating very hard times. There's a case for us having Dark Ages 2.0. And I can argue it won't be as bad because of the above ground resources and information and technology that we have. I will also argue that it's going to be significantly worse than the original Dark Ages, which after the Roman Empire fell lasted for 400 years. Just think about that, 400 years. How long are you planning on living? 70, 80 years? Multiple generations. The hard times that weak men create is going to be prolonged. Okay. But back then they had, limited technology. I'm sure in Rome they had, there was some evidence of like indoor plumbing and cleanliness and infrastructure and things. And in the Dark Ages, that was completely went away. There was no innovations, right? Actually, just let me read you. This is the simplest, easiest, definition. I did a Google search, right? What was it like to live in the Dark Ages? And here's what it says in a few sentences. Life was harsh, with a limited diet and little comfort. Women were subordinate to men in both the peasant and noble classes, and were expected to ensure the smooth running of the household. Children had a 50% survival rate beyond age 1 and began to contribute to family life around age 12. That, just those couple of sentences painted a nice little picture in my head for, back when I voted and was political and trying to change people's minds and things. It's like, how do you guys not see the consequences of your stupidity today? Like, how do you not see this? What happens with all of the stuff, right? I won't even get into politics, but the more I think about it, the more it's going to be bad. Now, what does this mean? So I guess if you're just living for yourself and not future generations, not your children and things, then you can take one route, right? Get some solar panels that are going to last you 25 years, maybe even 30, who knows? And some, expensive batteries that children had to mine the lithium somewhere to get your batteries and manufacture them in another country, because in the West, like specifically in Canada, we don't do anything. And import that in and then hook that up and then hope that whole system works flawless, the charge controllers and everything and all these amenities in your refrigerator, and nothing breaks down for the rest of your days, which is not going to happen, right? So this gets me thinking about the things that I do. So I can build a building that'll last a long time. I believe the average lifespan of a new house, the last time I checked and looked into this, was 70 years. So when you have a house, it's going to last 70 years. To keep that house going for those 70 years, it's going to need a lot of maintenance and some upgrades and redo the plumbing and some electrical things and redo the roof. Who knows how many times, but 70 years, and then the house will be torn down. Now, maybe it's a little bit better since the last time I looked at it when I was in construction and real estate. Maybe it's 100 years, right? Well, the original Dark Ages lasted 400 years. 400, not 100, not the lifespan of the average house. 400 years. That gets my mind working. I don't know if it does the same for you. So when I'm doing things like my greenhouse is my greenhouse, right? It's the main part of the building will last a long time, but the polycarbonate, you could build a greenhouse with poly, and if it's outside in a windy area, you'll get maybe 4 years if you're lucky with the greenhouse poly, and then you have to, guess what? Replace the entire poly to have a greenhouse. 4 years for poly, not 400. 4 years. The polycarbonate I put on is 10-year warranty, good for 25 years, especially like I built it, it's flat, good structure, but it's going to just disintegrate in 20, 25 years, right? And then what do, right? 400 years, the Dark Ages. Your wood stove isn't going to exist. It's going to be rusted and burnt out. The Dark Ages were bad. Like 50% survival rate of children beyond age 1. Okay. In that sentence as well, I won't get into this too much, but when we lose all the fakeness of government and the systems that we have, and all the crazy problems that are in the media and news and people like to talk about, when it goes back to nature and hard times again, it goes back to, well, just like I said, nature, a natural system. So in this sentence I Googled, it's women were subordinate to men in both peasant and noble classes. So that means there's no more feminism. You can't be a strong and brave woman because there's lions and tigers and bears to fight off. And that's typically what a man does. A man is there to protect women and children. If you really think about, there's no more welfare, there's no more electricity, there's no more amenities, there's no more building material. Do you know how hard that is going to be, right? When you get back to a natural system, probably the man is going to break his back bringing in firewood and trying to keep his family warm, and break his butt trying to find any food to bring into the household. And like, again, I don't know if you knew this, but women have children and are nurturing, and they have the ability to give the children food with their, chesticles that men can't do and things. And let's just leave that topic at that. Maybe you can do some further thinking to yourself. If you think some of the things I sound are extreme, you wouldn't believe the amount of censoring I have to do in my brain before words come out of my mouth, because I know the platform I'm talking to. But it's going to be bad. Now, the original Dark Ages, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have internet, they didn't have washing machines, refrigerators, appliances, solar panels, natural gas, furnaces. They didn't have any of that. So with the things that we have now and the entire systems that we have created, so like houses in cities and apartment buildings and condos, and those are all completely reliant on all these other infrastructure and input costs. Like, those houses are completely worthless if you have a preparedness mindset and you really think about it. But we are going to fall from much, much higher heights for the Dark Ages 2.0. If we lose any of the things that we have, because it's a fragile web we've woven, a house of cards. If, I don't know, you run out of diesel, guess what? Everybody starves to death where I'm from. There's no grocery stores. There's no food coming in. If we run natural gas, everybody freezes to death. Like, nobody has a wood stove. Why would you put a wood stove in? We have natural gas. If you lose electricity, again, your furnaces don't run. Your sump pump in your basement in your neighborhood that was built on a big slough, you flood out, and all your houses flood out. It's quite incredible. If you just lose the internet today, probably half the people that are employed in Western countries aren't employed anymore, myself included. The majority of our sales are online sales. I'm in this incredibly fragile system, right? Here's another case for you. The case for freeze-dried food. So it's hard to build a greenhouse. It's hard to grow food, and it's hard to grow food outside, let alone inside. It's hard. It's time-consuming. It's a lot of work. There's a case for freeze-dried food while times are good to put as much as you possibly can back. That has a super extended shelf life. If you store freeze-dried food properly, like, depending on what it is, if it's meat or fruit or vegetables or or other things. I would expect the way we store ours, and I actually live in it's very dry where I live, which is very good for storing freeze-dried food. Like if you're in Florida or something with 98% humidity, even the really good Mylar packaging, it probably permeates a little bit and is going to spoil the food. But I don't know. I'd be safe with 50, 100 years with freeze-dried food. But then again, the Dark Ages were 400 years. So, I mean, it's hard to store something for 400 years other than gold and silver, I guess. But there's a case for, instead of homesteading and building systems and production systems, to just stockpile as much as you possibly can. Because if you think things are going to get bad for really, really long term, right? Like I'm going to have to replace the polycarbonate on the greenhouse in 23 years or something. Then what do I do? Would it have just been better to stockpile food and eat out of Mylar bags for the next 25 years? And I don't know. But what I'm getting at is for what I think is a very good possibility. And again, these are long-term cycles. Like Rome didn't just collapse in a day. It was a decline like we see society now, right? They had inflation. They were clipping their coins. They didn't have sound money anymore. There was stupid things in society and problems that weren't problems, and nobody worked, and decadence and things. And then they were taken over by the barbarians quite easily, I think. And, there's a lot of parallels to today, but maybe it'll be my entire life. It'll just be this slow decline until and into the Dark Ages 2.0 or something. It's not going to just collapse tomorrow unless there's a black or white swan event. But it's kind of interesting. We have all these innovations in technology like electricity, the ability to make a solar panel. There's probably plans to how to make your own solar panel, right? There's all this information that's going to lessen the burden of the strong men that are going to survive and pull out through that. Like we have information, I guess, is key for the long term to keep books on hand. I don't know how long a CD, if you were to store stuff on a CD or a DVD or a USB drive or a computer hard drive, but that has a lifespan too, right? A book, a hardcover book will probably be the best thing to invest in for the long term for information. But anyways, we have the information that's going to lessen our burden, right? And we do have above ground resources. Like maybe if you have to build something if we're 100 years into the Dark Ages and 99.5% of the people have perished because it's going to be worse because we're all reliant on everything, maybe you could pick apart some old buildings or find some insulation instead of using, mud and straw to jam in holes of a crummy old little log building shanty that you made. Maybe you have insulation. Maybe you can scrounge up a piece of tin or something for the roof instead of some grass tied together. Maybe you can find a wood stove intact and a chimney instead of just building this inefficient thing out of rocks and clay. A lot. I would imagine in the first Dark Ages, a lot of houses burned down because, first of all, you have an open, inefficient fire, so you're always cold. If it's a cold climate, it's not an efficient stove. Your house is leaky in insulation. Your air quality is crap, right? You got wood stove, ash everywhere and things. And a lot of houses burn down because they're just, sticks of grass and sticks of like these shanties, essentially. So I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's are you prepared for like the Dark Ages 2.0, which kind of the civilization cycle kind of is showing. So I did a podcast on the civilization cycle, and it's fascinating. And you look into history, right? Like it's probably going to be bad for quite a few generations. The things that I see. So the weak men creating hard times, right? hard times creating strong men, but I always introduce this because everybody forgets. The weak men create hard times. The weak men don't become strong to create good times. The weak men all die, and only some of the strong men can get through that transition period. And then eventually, after decades or centuries, like the first Dark Ages, like in the first Dark Ages, there's no innovation, there's no nothing. It's primitive. Woman stays in the house. Woman looks after kids. Half of your kids are dead. The man dies at a very young age. There's no time for innovating. There's no innovations. It's complete survival for hundreds of years. And then after that, the strong men that have got through that over the generations, whoever's left, maybe they can have enough freedom to not just try to survive, but actually try to innovate and then build and then make things better again. And then the civilization cycle, it goes back, and all the way from strong men creating good things, and then the decadence that comes through that, and then the extreme decadence that, and the weak men that collapse everything. And then this is going to sound funny, but so I'm digging a pond at my homestead. So I built a lot of things: a shop, house, greenhouses, barn on my homestead. But all these things are, sticks and insulation and metal, and they're going to last a long time. They're going to last my life and, my kids' lives if some of them maintain it or whatever. But digging a pond, I'm just digging a big hole in the earth, moving dirt away to have a big hole that's in a proper location. It's got a proper percentage of land around for the runoff. Like, there's a lot to building a proper pond ecosystem. So a hole in the ground, big enough to make its own ecosystem. You dig a hole, and it's just a hole in the ground. That hole is going to be there throughout a 400-year Dark Ages. That hole is going to be there. It's going to always have trout in it if I do it properly and don't overfish it. And it's not going to have algae problems, deoxygenation problems. Like if you did a small pond and you're reliant on a wind thing or an electric pump to oxygenate the water so the fish don't die, that's going to conk out. But a great big hole in the ground is going to be there, just like a natural lake and a river and things in nature are there. They're always going to be there. Wildlife is kind of always going to be there unless people like overhunt them or it's a bad winter and there's die off, but then they do come back. Natural systems, not man-made buildings and technology and solar panels and Starlink internet and all that stuff. There's a good chance it's going to go away if things get bad in the future. And part of me wants to think it's not going to get that bad. There's always going to be natural gas and fresh drinking water and electricity to people's houses, and people are always going to be able to call a plumber, and that plumber's always going to be able to get imported fittings from other countries that actually produce things, and it'll be good forever and ever. And we'll always have diesel and trucks and truckers, and we'll be able to get all of our food and stuff from California at the closest and Asia at the longest and things like that. Oh no, it's perfectly fine. There's nothing to worry about. What is anybody worried about? Yeah, preppers are crazy people. But if any one of those things breaks, it literally takes you into the Dark Ages. So now, if one of those things breaks, hopefully there's something or someone or some part you can get or other parts of the system that'll allow you to fix the thing that broke to maintain some, semblance of the world that we're all accustomed to now. But I don't know. It's kind of crazy to think about. So what might be best is, what did people value a long time ago in the Dark Ages? Well, a strong man would have valued, I guess real money, like gold and silver, right, would be one. Good heads of hand tools, like a hand forged axe head, and then maybe that axe head is passed down over the generations, and it's had 40 different hickory handles on it, each strongman that used it. And they had to put a new handle in themselves, but an axe head, I don't know, an anvil, a really good wood stove. And then buildings can come and go. Your shanty can come and go. You know, one will burn down, and then you have to spend the summer and build another one out of logs and mud and natural resources or anything you can scrounge up. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot to be said for living a small, simplest lifestyle. So there's no more big houses. You build a small insulated house. You live primitively. Like instead of getting a big solar panel array, you put, I don't know, a wood cook stove in your house so you don't need electricity for that, and have a small solar panel thing that doesn't cost a lot because it's just going to screw up anyways in the future, just to give you some amenities like lights. Because, you know, way back when, I don't know what they had like for lights. I guess when it's light out is when you're awake, and when it's dark out is when you sleep, essentially. And then eventually came out with kerosene lamps and candles and things, or torches. You know, all those things cost something. You have to put those together. And today we have, which is a much cheaper option, is solar panels and batteries. But, you know, people in parts of the world that live in these little shanties and live very primitively in the third world, right? They'll have a hut and a little tiny solar panel that you can probably get up here on Amazon for $20, and a used car battery and a roll of speaker wire and a little charge controller thing. Don't need an inverter because you just have one light in your shanty that makes all the difference in the world, right? And then you don't need a kerosene lamp or to buy kerosene. You can just have a little 12-volt light on. Solar panels make a massive, huge difference for somebody living primitively in a little hut. And then here it's, you know, we have farmers like, I've got 300 panels on my farm. I've got 400 panels on my farm for all our electrical consumption, right? So it kind of makes you think, the things that you build and the way you set up your homestead and things like that. So even a barn, like if it goes back to dark ages, you want a small but big enough, high efficient barn built for longevity. You know, old school stuff that nobody does anymore. So everybody does round bales now with all this equipment. But if you're actually going to survive or something, probably square bales, probably have a loft on your barn to put the square bales up there. So all winter you pitch them down to the animals. You know, what about all this antique things that nobody's interested? How about a hand saw, an antique hand saw for bucking up firewood? How about a washboard for washing your clothes? How about just a big metal bin to have a tub of water? How about just pails that are going to last more than, you know, a few weeks if you're actually using a pail to go get water from a well, right? How about a system and rope to, once you go milk the goat and get your cream and butter, you need a cream can and you need to put that down the well, because that's your refrigerator now, because we do not have refrigeration. That's what they did in the old days. Get a rope, put the cream can down into the water, into the well, and that kept the cream cool for you. So, yeah, so it depends how bad you think things are going to get. You could just, you know, be like the boomer generation I always pick on, but thank goodness I don't have to live this long to see the repercussions of, you know, what's going to happen in the future. As long as things keep going on that I can die peacefully in my bed, then I'm happy. So why would I worry about these things? Because I'm old already and I don't have to live through it. So the younger people have to live through it. But as long as I can die peacefully in my beds, then it's all good. So So there's only so much you can store, right? You can only store so much freeze-dried food. I know some guys that I listen to on alternative platforms and things, they literally stored up and purchased a full 25 years of food for them, and that's what they're going to live on, like pretty much the rest of their days, because they don't trust the system. It's going to collapse. The inflation, right? They just stocked up 25 years worth of food, all different kinds, freeze dried meat, freeze dried meals, whatever. You can only store so much. We stored antibiotics. So from Chase Medical, we got, and we did a video on that too, storing the different antibiotics. Now that's great too, but those don't last long. Those don't have a super long shelf life. We store them cool, dry, dark, stable environment, just like our freeze dried food. So, they're probably just lose their potency, but could use them after the expiry date. Some antibiotics go toxic after their best before date, so be careful with that. But, if you can't get antibiotics, and I don't know if you knew this, but over 90% of all pharmaceuticals, including antibiotics, come from China. Just like, I don't know, 95% of all of our goods in any store here, they all come from China or have components from there. And I try to keep the current events out of it, but the things going on in China where there's massive, massive supply chain issues because they're having problems over there and their lockdown problems and things, and we can't get things here like basic antibiotics. So if you have an ingrown hair on your hip or something, that, like I did, and I needed antibiotics 10 years ago for a stupid ingrown hair where my tool belt was riding, that would have killed me, right? That would have been the end of my story. So you can store that. You can store, for longevity, it's keep it simple, stupid. We're going back to basics type stuff, right? Like when the man is out breaking his butt trying to hunt, or going to butcher a farm animal or something, or working in the fields, or hand baling up square bales of hay, then the wife is doing some gardening and washing carrots and looking after the kids and taking the carrot peelings and stuff out to the chickens so the chickens have enough food and stuff. And really think about it. Look into how they used to live. It was a tiny little house, one room house. The chicken coop, if they were lucky enough to have a chicken coop, sometimes the chickens just stayed in your house with you. Wouldn't that be fantastic? And actually, where we live, the old pioneers, and still some people today, actually, in really small rural parts, but in the wintertime when it's really cold, the livestock go into the only other warm building, which is your own house. So you cohabitate dwelling, a heated dwelling, to get out of the cold. And it's always cold in there. You're never going to get it up to t-shirt weather, like put a sweater on, but chickens in there and goats and the pigs in there and in your house with you. If you're in a cold climate, right? If you're in a temperate climate, then they can just have a run outside in a little shelter. But in a cold climate, yeah, your chickens are going to put some chickens in your master bedroom in your McMansion townhouse, right? So there's my rant for the day. Pretty pessimistic if you think that that's what we're going into. But again, if you compare the long-term civilization cycle to the Roman Empire, Rome went in and, the strong men, they went and conquered everything. There was nothing else left to conquer. It was just prosperity for a long time. And then you had intellects and artists, and then fast forward a bunch of decadence and weird stuff, and then a bunch of welfare, and then inflation, and then a slow decline into full collapse, and then a 400-year period of dark ages. So if you go by the civilization cycle and you compare that to today, I don't know. Let me know what you think. And maybe we shouldn't even be worried about that. Maybe we should take the boomer out, and well, I won't have to worry about that. I'll hopefully be dead. It's our kids are going to have to figure that one out. So, and again, at this point, there's no changing it. So I don't vote anymore. I'm not trying to, change people's minds of how they vote and how, it's because it's too late. I'm just throwing out my olive branch to some other person on the same rough mindset to pass on some information and my thoughts of things. Yep, you're going to have to save yourself because nobody's going to save you. So, end rant. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next time.